Hey guys, welcome back. I want to dive straight into this video content as I know I've been inactive for quite some time and I do apologize for that, but that could be a brief talk for the next video. The purpose of this video is just a response to Vice's latest episode regarding the Donbass War, and I obviously have mixed feelings about it and noticed some yellow paging on their behalf. Since this isn't exactly a debunking video compared with my previous ones, like the one with France 24, so I will have some dialogue with sarcasm emphasized, but there's truth to it. I think the people interviewed here aren't what Vice was exactly expecting, so this video will focus more on if the word volunteer fighters even applies anymore to Ukrainian battalions. Before we dive into the video, I want to quickly point out that Vice, since they are owned by HBO and HBO is a premium channel, go hardcore on their copyright. So this video may not last long if they hear something they don't like, and YouTube is very quick to detect Vice material usage. Even once when I just used a 15-second clip for a 10-minute video and the entire video was copyrighted by Vice before I even got to upload it. So yeah, best case it'll just be monetized and views from my response video will go to their revenue, which is obviously something I'm against, but what can you do? And at worst, they'll take down the whole video entirely. Vice's full episode link will be down in the description below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so and click on the notification bell to be updated with this channel's latest uploads. After this video, I plan to have 3 more releases within this week. More serious and informative videos like I used to do that will include both recent and current events analyzed to their roots, and a surprise video that all audiences will love regardless of the political views. Let's also aim for 150 likes for this video. With no further delays, let's begin.
Hidden away on the front lines of eastern Ukraine is a potentially deadly force. Volunteer fighters who saved the nation from invaders remain armed and dangerous, and could always turn their weapons on their own government.
То есть объясни ему, что сейчас мы герои-красавцы, а завтра мы приказом президента станем террористами.
So what would you do if the government declared you a terrorist and made you a criminal?
Уже были попытки просто на самом деле там захватить нашу базу, но у них не получилось.
We didn't even get to the 1-minute mark yet, and already on the 40th second, there's a mistranslation here done on purpose, of course. The most basic of yellow journalism to keep people from researching their own details. What this guy actually says is that, quote, there already were instances of them trying to take over our bases, but it didn't work out for them, end quote. The way they translate it is into what-if scenario, when in reality, and I have covered some of these instances, there were plenty of clashes between the Ukrainian military and Ukrainian nationalist forces. They can't even be called volunteer forces at this point, but more about that further down the line. There was even one case when right sector volunteer soldiers in Kiev threw a grenade into riot police, injuring 100 soldiers, but obviously nobody was prosecuted.
Ну займем круговую оборону, а там посмотрим, насколько их хватит.
It smells a little bit like powder.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. They've been shelling this piece
stretch?
of road, yeah.
A war has been dragging on here for years. Ukrainian armed forces are locked in a stalemate with Russian-backed separatists, and civilians are left to pick up the pieces. When it all started in 2014, Ukraine's military was totally unprepared. We're heading to meet the guy who back then took charge and urged anyone, regardless of their past or motive, to get to the front and fight.
Another checkpoint?
Yeah, we should stop filming somewhere here.
Camera down. I've followed the conflict in Ukraine for a while. Obviously, you're a very powerful guy. I heard you have a sniper rifle in your office.
Є багато чого в офісі.
He has a sniper rifle in his office because he's currently Ukraine's head of National Security and Defense Council, previously being a secretary but acting as the head regardless. He literally decides which weapons are going to get funded, which weapons are going to be sent over to the National Guard of Ukraine, and which leftovers will be received by the actual Ukrainian army. The sniper rifle that he has in his office is the Zbroyar Z008, a very expensive sniper rifle and one that I uploaded a documentary of before. The part of him laughing about a lot of things in his office is probably a safe with a lot of internationally donated and taxpayers' money that he keeps for himself, but that would be speculatory of me, and this channel does not speculate, but rather analyzes, and currently there is not enough evidence to explain why there's hundreds of millions of dollars missing that goes through Alexander Turchinov.
Turchinov is a controversial guy. In 2014, he stepped in as Ukraine's acting president.
Why don't you briefly list some of those controversies? TLDR, he was very much involved in forming the volunteer battalions, allocating funds to them, and finding a loophole in the law that would adopt many volunteer battalions into Ukraine's newly formed National Guard, rather than do what the European Union wanted to do and disarm the volunteer battalions. This is also why the National Guard of Ukraine, which is made up of those volunteers, but are on a government payroll, get the best weapons in the Ukrainian arsenal. Turchinov decides who gets the goodies, and his support is for the nationalist battalions.
At the time, anti-government protesters were in open revolt. Neighboring Russia moved in and took over Crimea, and then began arming separatists in eastern Ukraine.
До наших північних і східних кордонів російських.
Let's totally skip the anti-Maidan protesters and their government change wishes. That's cool. Just remind everyone of the Russian land grab, cause, you know, fuck the eastern Ukrainian population. Just asking for a simple cause and effect. It's not like Russia one day just woke up and said, hey, let's send all our troops to the eastern border of Ukraine.
До наших північних і східних кордонів російські війська. Ситуація була просто драматична.
So there's 2 wars and basically no army.
І тоді я змушений був звернутися до українських патріотів і попросити їх іти добровільно захищати Україну.
For a person that wasn't forced to do any of this and who wants to show empathy for his fallen brothers, he sure seems very rich and well fed, while those volunteers barely get any nutritious meals.
Rotten vegetables, stale bread, and a sense of hopelessness surround Ukrainian soldiers stationed at a checkpoint near the southeastern Ukrainian city of Mariupol. This is a regular dugout where soldiers from Ukraine's National Guard, along with volunteer fighters, are on duty around the clock, keeping a watchful eye over the strategic port city. They say living in these quarters hasn't been easy as the months get colder. One soldier tells us the problem with this dugout is that it's not meant to be lived in. When it rains, the roof leaks and our mattresses become wet. Some of these men are not used to complaining. They served for several weeks in one of the most dangerous places so far in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. They took part in the siege of Donetsk airport in February, which was dubbed Little Stalingrad because Ukrainian troops were outnumbered and under-equipped. Now they are left to depend on volunteers to bring them fresh food and military gear. One soldier says, we are left to buy everything with our own money, boots and uniforms. The things they give us are not good for winter. The troops also showed us a first aid kit, which they were provided with, which is over 50 years old, they say. But what really frustrates them is the indifference shown to them by their commander. Our commander doesn't even visit us. If he does come, he doesn't address all of us, so that we don't ask him any questions. He gets into his car quickly and leaves.
Since he cares only about the weapons and feeding himself, the Ukrainian volunteers' lives, living conditions, will be shown further down the video.
За це вони віддавали свою кров і життя.
It's on the record that some of these guys that were fighting were criminals. Neo-Nazis, fascists.
Але дехто з них дійсно показав себе з негативної сторони. Але це були одиниці.
So you don't regret that decision at all?
Коли б ситуація повторилася, я б діяв би так само. Тому що головна моя задача була захистити країну. І ми виконали це завдання.
Are they still there? Are they still actually undertaking serious operations?
Саме Збройні сили сьогодні повністю несуть відповідальність за захист України.
You're sure the volunteers, they're just doing assistance now?
Безумовно. І ще ж кажу, між Україною і Росією саме відповідають наші військові керівники.
That is absolutely false. The loophole I mentioned earlier allows volunteers to act independently by their National Guard commanders. Each battalion got their own commander. So for example, Azov Regiment had their same commander. Donbass Battalion, Aidar Battalion got to keep their commanders. They just operate under a different label now, that label being the National Guard of Ukraine. But in no way is the army in control of the National Guard. On the contrary, the army fears to go against any National Guardsman orders. So it could be said that unofficially the guardsmen or volunteers, since they still wear flags and insignias of their volunteer battalion they started out with, outrank the actual, real military of Ukraine. This topic alone could be talked about in a separate video, so we'll move on.
Turchinov sticking to the script. To secure Western military aid, Ukraine must show that proper command and control are firmly in place. As if to prove Ukraine's military might to us, they roll out the big guns.
The big guns. So why are you showing me a T-84 Oplot M tank? That tank had major failures when trying to sell them to Thailand because they couldn't produce enough of them. Sure, it's an impressive tank. I personally love that tank, but it hasn't even seen action in the Donbass War because it's just simply too complex to produce for Ukraine. Add that with the Ukrainian government's, including Alexander Turchinov's choice to allocate funding away from Malyshev plant in Kharkov, the one they are showing right now, to a brand new plant in Lvov called the Lviv Armor Plant Factory. They did this because of fears that pro-Russians would sabotage the vehicles that are in construction, since Kharkov was, up until recently, a mostly Russian-speaking and culturally identified Russian population. I mean, hell, even Malyshev factory was named after Vyacheslav Malyshev, asked the Soviet Union to be buried in Red Square because he loved the USSR so much, and today is buried next to Lenin. Just show me a 155mm artillery piece or something next time, something that was actually used in the war.
It's just like bringing out the show horse, except it's a live tank. Oh, sick.
It's an impressive show, but most of these top-of-the-line tanks are for the export market.
The one export sale that went horribly wrong because Ukraine couldn't deliver them on time 3 times and made Thailand go to Russia to buy tanks.
Not the front lines of eastern Ukraine. Doesn't quite add up. It makes us question the party line that there aren't any rogue volunteers out there still fighting, unwilling to hand over their weapons to their own government.
Because they're kinda, sorta part of, but not really of, the government, with the labels and the loopholes and the,
We have to sneak in because the Ukrainian military that set up all these checkpoints to kind of vet who goes in and out is not really keen on us covering the battalions.
Yeah, he needs the passport.
So we're gonna follow him in?
Yeah.
Perfect. It's like an apocalyptic movie set.
Yeah. Okay, guys, here we are. That's no one know what it says. This sign says we are not here.
The sign says we're not here.
We are not here.
That. Jesus.
Marinka was completely separatist held up until June of 2016. The ceasefire deal was signed in February 2015. It was a bloody battle which I have translated primary footages of. So, who attacked who? This is why the army isn't posted on the frontest front of the lines, because odds are that they'd actually obey the ceasefire. But with volunteers, Ukraine can always say, oh, we didn't have control over that situation. They attacked us first anyways. Seriously, if I had a nickel for every report that says that since April 2014, let's see. Set on a daily basis, 4 years. I'd have $75 extra in my pocket right now. And that's just counting one side. Don't get me started on the separatists or OSCE's reports.
We got through a military checkpoint as volunteers helping the military. We're here kind of completely clandestinely. Yeah, I wouldn't fuck with these guys. Everyone keeps talking about the snipers, so let's go hang out with snipers. This used to be an orphanage, and this is the pool for the kids. Clearly it's not that anymore. It's an extra set piece from The Walking Dead, I think.
A piece from The Walking Dead? Did nobody in your team ever play Call of Duty 4 or Stalker that shows practically the same image in the same country? Chernobyl would be a more accurate synonym to this image.
The cats are stressed out. Let's move. Let's go. Is this basically your home?
Да. Временное жилье. Назовем его так.
Well, it's cozy, that's for sure. No windows.
Чем больше мешков с песком, тем больше ты живешь и дольше.
What were you before the war?
Жил гражданской жизнью, как все нормальные люди.
Wait, so if you were a civilian before, but a volunteer fighter, since not part of the official military is technically still a civilian, then what are you now? Either this guy messed up with his script by forgetting he's part of the National Guard and thus a government payroll, which would make him not a civilian as he claims he's not one, or they label volunteer fighters as, it can be terrorists, and nationalism isn't really a full-time job either.
What do you like about the war right now? What do you like about what you're doing?
Ну, я вам скажу, война это вообще плохо. Но приходится заниматься и любить это дело, потому что если это дело не любить... И многие люди, которые отсюда приезжают, возвращаются в гражданскую жизнь, они уже смотрят не так, как смотрели до этого. Это кровь и земля. Это вообще изменилось все.
Well, he's right about red representing blood. I mean, that flag is responsible for the Polish massacre on western Ukrainian soil known as the Galicia massacre, and taking the manifesto of that flag by Stepan Bandera just further states how Ukrainians should be ruthless and whatnot. I'll just stop here before I jump into another right sector conversation.
I mean, you got an AK bullets, you got some tea, dogs. What more do you need?
Свободы надо.
Oh, just you? Not the civilians on the other end of the front line? Pretty sure the ordinary people want freedom there too, without the, blood and ruthlessness.
It's cool to see how these guys live, but I really want to see if they're actually fighting. Are they just out here playing soldier, or do they have a crucial combat role? Despite what the government's told me.
Ну да, нехай одіваються в повну бойову і все. Привет. Привет.
This is Thunder. He's taking us to another position. Gotta say, I like his bandana. Looks like a proper Cossack warrior.
A bandana that, for example, nearly every Russian soldier wore during the two Chechenian wars. I mean, the reporter may be new to this, but bandanas were very common amongst Eastern European soldiers of any nation. The entire reason for the non-lethal aid by the West is so that they can replace bandanas with professional military helmets. Am I hating too much on bandanas right now? They do look cool. I'm just saying it's not a Ukrainian exclusive soldier's culture to wear one.
По великому рахунку вже нічого нема. Тут якщо коли вернеться мирне життя, тут просто треба це все згортати і все. Нема що відбудовувати.
Even if that would be the case, why is it then that villages on the separatist side of the line that were severely damaged by shelling are able to, through Russian aid, support rebuild civilian areas quickly and efficiently, and where civilians respond that they can at least imagine a more normal life since basic necessities like power and water are restored almost instantaneously. And I've translated multiple videos before that shows and explains the process in details with civilian input in mind in them as well. It just seems that Ukraine doesn't want to rebuild eastern Ukrainian government sectors, because why waste resources on a bunch of people that are labeled as separatists anyways? Don't hate me for this, I'm just quoting the civilians from the other side.
Residents from Ukraine's eastern town of Artemovo have been venting their frustrations on local government officials. Many of the houses in this town have been left without roofs or completely destroyed by shelling, and with the harsh winter around the corner, people are on the verge of panic. Nearly 1 year ago, this town was under control of Russian-backed militants. It was reclaimed by government forces, but only 40% of the town's population has remained. Over 200 families which chose to stay since the start of the conflict don't have anywhere to live. Their homes have been either turned into rubble or are on the verge of collapsing. The local government has been struggling from the start, first with putting out fires started by shelling, and now in providing temporary shelters or means to rebuild some of the houses. One resident tells us, the fire truck came and it had no water. You can write that down. If the fire truck had water, our neighbors would have still had 2 parts of their house intact, and half of our house would be intact as well. A local municipal official tells us that the regional government is tasked with rebuilding homes, but at the moment, it simply doesn't have the means to do this. The only help comes in the form of volunteers and the Ukrainian army. We find what the problems are and see if we can help. We also find volunteer organizations, and with their assistance, we provide help. Last year, the Ukrainian government estimated that it will take $2 billion to restore the war-torn areas reclaimed by government forces. This does not include the damage inflicted on Donetsk, currently the militant stronghold and once Ukraine's industrial hub.
Why are you called Thunder?
Це побратими дали такий позивний, коли я сюди приїхав. Мене не видно, але мене чути.
Did you ever think that you were going to be in a place like this, fighting in a war?
Is that a German flag on that right sector volunteer's uniform? I mean, of course it is. Now, I'm not jumping to say that right sectors are neo-Nazis, and I'm well aware that back in 2014, Germany donated a lot of German uniforms to the Ukrainian army. Without the flags, though, it must just be a trend thing between the volunteers. I see that a lot, but none of them give the answer of what it's supposed to symbolize or represent.
Якісь двіжі можуть бути зараз.
Thunder seems like a take-charge kind of guy. If these volunteers are actually fighting, he'll be in the middle of the action.
Sniper?
Снайпер, yes. Эту одень, касочку надень лучше.
Although this isn't going to protect me from a sniper round. I want to see some of the fighting myself, because if I'm going to tell this story back home, I have to show what's happening to you personally.
Якщо ви вечором будете на позиції, якщо дозволить командування бути на позиції, то я думаю, що ви будете мати шанс побачити якусь перестріл. Кожного дня є загроза, що вони можуть відкрити вогонь першими по нас.
Yes, but what are the chances of this night in particular of seeing combat? He seems pretty confident about it. I know shellings occur often, but they don't occur every single day. Are they going to try to put up an act for this Western reporter? Let's find out.
Thunder seems eager to go, and is keen to show me something.
Синій.
Yeah. Special stash.
СПГ, F1, F1, РПГ 22.
Yeah.
Коли вже дуже треба бути злим,
It's a lot of
а нема
stuff.
чим.
That's a lot of explosives. They don't even hide them, but admittedly open them to the press. When there was a French team in the separatist positions by the front lines, the rebels either hid them or they weren't there. And I pointed out how all you could see is small arms weaponry and ammunition for them. Makes you wonder, I mean, I understand keeping them around in case an enemy tank or BMP decides to break the ceasefire protocol and just advance into an enemy trench, but the way he says it, like as if they often use them. Maybe one of their commanders in one of the other positions further down the video can shed some light on that.
Sorry. Да, Дизель. Да. Все біля мене, да, все під контролем. Давай. Командир. Переживає, куди ви пропали.
The commander seems a bit twitchy. We'll need to sort it out if we're going to stay.
Already hearing artillery, but we just heard one that was really close.
Incoming artillery or outgoing artillery? That's kind of important.
All right, let's go. Let's get out of here. Oh, fuck. That's an artillery. That, Jesus. Holy fuck. That's a heavy gun. Obviously some shelling and some fighting started off.
Yes, but who started it? Shouldn't that be one of the reporter's priorities to record who actually starts the provocative actions? That heavy gun sounds as if it is fired really close by, if you ask me.
Already? I can tell everyone kind of got a little jumpy. I think they've got an artillery cannon here.
Майами, Мичиган.
We finally scored a meeting with the commanders.
So we will talk to Diesel right now.
Cool.
Hopefully, they'll let us stay the night.
The girl has a lot more clothes on than most of the military barracks I've been to where they have pinups.
Я не знаю, де це взявся цей. Я тоді приїхав, він вже був.
Huh, funny. I kind of completely get why you guys are volunteering to fight this enemy to save your nation and your people. But why did you both join the volunteer army and not the regular military?
Більше підходить саме ця структура революційна, радикальна, чим звичайна армія.
Well, we can agree on something. You said it, not me.
Ну тут все дуже просто. Ми трошки інші.
So what would you guys do if the volunteer military had to be folded into the regular military?
Ми просто свідомо не йдемо в ту систему, яка завідомо нас буде з'їдати.
Нічого хорошого не вийде звідти.
But the National Guard loophole. I guess we're just pretending that doesn't exist. Cool.
And would you say that you're both willing to die for this cause?
За 3,5 роки війни вже якось цим питанням вже не стоїть, готовий чи не готовий, вже твердо знаєш, що, ну.
Yeah, cool. We can stay tonight.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now we're doing what every soldier does in every war. Sit around and wait.
This is what I meant earlier when I said that Turchinov, looking all well-fed and being rich and one of the starters of the entire volunteer battalion movement, doesn't seem to deliver well-nourishment for these guys. And that's really sad. There were videos where I uploaded before but were taken down, where both Ukrainian soldiers and volunteer battalions were complaining that they were underfed and even received stale and expired food. And that's just really not cool.
That's some pretty heavy guns. And the soundtrack of Ukraine has begun already.
О. Гладиолус, парни.
You hear that? That's a sniper. Holy shit, that was close.
Лёш, давай.
Красавчик, блядь, держись, Вася!
Wait, that's it? Would still like to know who opened fire first, but we're just left in the dark to assume? Usually in situations like these, soldiers want to prove their innocence by saying something like, quote, "See, we're just sitting here, they opened fire first," or something along those lines. These guys just don't confirm or deny anything, don't bring up the situation at all.
That's the thing about this war. It's no longer this raging hormonal teenager. It's now this jaded adult. And it just keeps on going and going. Over 10,000 dead. Almost 2 million displaced, with no end in sight.
As I always mention, those statistics are mostly applicable to the separatist side of the war zone, the displacement, the civilian casualties. Even Marinka, where the reporter is right now, was a separatist-held territory with footage of separatists evacuating the civilians into Donetsk city. A quick fun fact, between 2016 and 2017, the pro-Ukrainian forces, and reason I say pro-Ukrainian is because I don't even know what to label them as anymore, since they are and aren't part of the official military when they want to be apparently. Between those 2 years, gained 6 territories, Marinka being one of them, over the separatists. The separatists have 0 territorial advancements since 2015 from Debaltseve. You guys can check out the time-lapsed war map. Wait, another position already? We're not going to wait for the OSCE? The OSCE is actually very quick in response times to areas that claim they were under attack. Many footages, on this channel included, as well as their own claims, say and shows us that the OSCE usually arrives at the aftermath of a battle zone by morning time if shelling occurred overnight. The fact that the OSCE isn't even mentioned is kinda telling me that this whole act was either staged or this position was on the offensive rather than a defensive strike.
We've heard about another position held by a different group of volunteers.
Can we please get the name of the group of volunteers? No? Okay.
So we head north up the contact line.
This is a pretty, advanced position, right?
It's almost on the front, really close. So we have another checkpoint here. Здрасте, Авдіївку.
That was easy.
So yeah.
There used to be heavy fighting here, but it's been pretty quiet lately. The volunteers show no sign of leaving though, drawn to stay with their legendary leader, Santa.
Oh, another right sector position. How could I have missed that? Avdiivka saw heavy fighting, especially in 2016-2017, in what became known as the Prom Zone, a pretty much buffer zone, and becoming an artillery war. Claims from the Ukrainian side would report that they are being attacked from the Zaitseva location, while eyewitness testimonies from Zaitseva showed that Zaitseva was being surrounded by landmines and the civilians there lived in basements for shelter from artillery strikes from Avdiivka. That was civilians talking, and as I've always said, civilians, along with their testimonies and footages, I consider as the most truthful primary sources out there because it is not intervened by any type of media or journalism. The civilians in the winter of 2016 were reporting that the National Guard of Ukraine, that's right, they said the National Guard, was 200 to 300 meters away from their village. In early 2017, Zaitseva is split between the National Guard and separatist control, half and half. By spring, Zaitseva is fully under nationalist control.
Yeah. Oh, Santa.
I like your dacha. Obviously, you've got this kind of fearsome reputation. A little bit of a Ukrainian folklore hero.
Тут трошки інші подарунки приносяться. І не чемним дітям, а дебілам.
Delivering explosive damage to the enemy does not sound like a defensive stance to me. If you truly analyze his words straight up, it sounds more like of a surprise attacks, which coincidentally is exactly what the citizens of Zaitsevo were reporting as well. Zaitsevo video translations of civilian testimonies will be in the description and at the end screen video, as I believe that really opens up the perspective of what actually went down in Zaitsevo, while Avdiivka has pretty much no civilian testimonies that I can find personally, and very rarely would a war correspondent from the Ukrainian side show up anywhere near the front line or the prom zone, giving me a limited amount of evidence, sources, and confirmation to work with from the Ukrainian side other than their reports which cannot be verified or confirmed.
And how long have you been fighting in this war?
Та от уже 3 роки буде.
So why did you choose to join a volunteer brigade rather than joining the actual Ukrainian military?
Ну як віддати от своє життя і життя своїх побратимів в руки комусь, хто, можливо, не настільки підготовлений, скажімо так, м'яко.
I thought Ukraine's stance was very committed to fighting against the Russian aggressor. Or is it because the Ukrainian army knows that they'd be harming mostly civilians and not the so-called Russian soldiers there?
Я коли вперше потрапив на війну, я думав, що обісруся з переляку. Якщо ти взагалі нічого не боїшся, ти або ідіот, або через день мертвий.
So is it important for you?
Момент. Я сигарету візьму, бо я коли довго не курю, починаю паніка у мене починається.
How would you describe yourself politically?
Анархіст.
Anarchist.
Анархія мать порядку.
I agree, and this brings me to the point of making this video. Right sector causes fear throughout not only separatist civilians, but Ukrainian civilians and organizations including the police as well. They'll never be labeled as a terrorist organization, however, because most of their work is underpaid and part of the Ukrainian interest. So why would Ukraine pay more to play by the rules when they can blame it on not having control over the volunteers? Having a dozen Ukrainian state police killed and 100 wounded per year by right sector is still much more cost-effective than sending out official military operations controlled directly by the government with no independent decision-making of that organization whatsoever, unlike the Ukrainian National Guard that still does act independently of the government despite being under a government branch. Anybody who doesn't agree with them is an enemy of Ukraine and suffers the consequences. That's why it's not uncommon for a lot of Ukrainian patriots, myself included, supporting Ukraine, but highly disapproving of nationalist organizations. Though most civilians in Kiev, for example, don't show their unsupport for them because that would make them un-Ukrainian. And on a worldwide scale, people are starting to consider that as well due to the government having nationalist volunteer supporters as well as denying their extremism again because of the funding allocation. I spoke about their actions on separate videos many times, but as I'm making this, I'm thinking about making a video after this showcasing nationalist crimes that they themselves are proud of, not against the separatists or pro-Russians, but against Ukrainians, and it's a big list.
So do you think in some ways you're almost better off that you've experienced this war?
Я навіть не знаю, це на краще чи на гірше, але тут набагато, змінює війна дуже сильно.
It must be difficult to lose people here on the front. Do you feel like you're almost a little bit responsible for that? This is where the grave is, in the slope? Where's Shaman?
Шаман.
Shaman.
How many of your guys have you lost?
Так багато. У нас же ж постійно тут накриває.
Tough to deal with.
Це все. Кожне людське життя, воно велика втрата.
you think when regular life comes back, you'll be okay?
Та ні, Боже збав.
I can't argue with the fact that a lot of people on both sides died, but that's literally one cross with 3 individuals' pictures. There's literally modern-day grave sites of thousands of soldiers, like something seen from a World War II movie on the separatist side of the territory, and a stone tablet in Kiev with the names of every Ukrainian soldier killed in action, like the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. Weird how Vice doesn't show that. To me, if that's the entire casualty record of 2017 of Avdiivka versus Zaitseva scenario during the prom zone, that's more realistic to me. I don't know the story, but at least explain those 3 killed in action right there and where the other graves are from your unit if you are a caring commander.
That definitely makes me think about things. They don't know what they're gonna do after this. They hadn't thought about it. Nobody has an answer about what happens after.
Yes, unfortunately, there is no VA services in Ukraine just yet. No Veterans Affairs to treat things like PTSD and other traumatic experiences. Whether that's for the best or worst, because of how our VA system is debatable.
Just a few hours' drive from the front is Ukraine's capital, Kiev. It's a bit strange being back here. It kind of just feels like life goes on as normal.
You were near the front lines for 2 days, Mr. Reporter. Of course people try to live normal lives, even in the most war-torn parts of the globe. What are they going to do? Just walk around all day and grieve all day for the rest of their lives?
At Ukraine's National War Museum, it's business as usual. But they've got a new exhibit about the ongoing war in the East.
Oh look, it's a Zaitseva sign from the most recently captured village.
I've been there.
Авдіївка.
Yeah. Pромzona.
Промзона.
Lots of bang, 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 bang.
Action.
Action, yeah. So some people say that the volunteer battalions have done damage and are villains and not heroes. What do you say to people that think it's a negative thing?
Хто це каже?
Who says that? I'ma silence the shit out of him.
I haven't heard this as like a thing where everyone thinks this. It's just one of the criticisms I've heard about it.
Ну кожен має право на свою думку, і кожен має свою думку. Да? Він висказується, а нам як добровольцям, нам абсолютно насрать на їхню точку зору. Ми робимо все одно свою роботу.
Total tension in the atmosphere from that other guy. Then they remembered they were on camera and say what any other organization would say about free opinion, which, as we've seen many times, is completely not the case. I think they'll do more than say it's bullshit to a person that doesn't consider them as heroes, because remember, they themselves said that they're radicals and anarchists.
От підросте у мене дитина і запитає у мене: тато, а що ти робив, коли була війна? А що я йому скажу? Що я йому скажу? Я захищав свою країну, тебе, дружину, маму твою. Ну, це чоловіча робота, все.
I really don't think that central and western Ukraine was ever in danger to begin with. But sure, let's go with your story.
After more food and even more drinks, things get pretty real, pretty fast.
Oh! That's gonna hurt the ears a little bit. Yo, man.
We do remember that there's a child there, right? Right? Wouldn't call this a child-friendly environment. Yet again, neither are the shell-torn cities and villages, so I guess I shouldn't even be bringing this up.
Try. Safety off. Interesting dudes, clearly nationalists. They also said, fuck the police.
You know, a lot of people say fuck the police, myself included, but fuck the government that gave you the arms that you're fighting with. So this brings me to one of my many points throughout my channel. Nationalists acted on their own while representing Ukraine, while Ukraine continues to use them and deny any wrongdoing. It's like a circle. Nationalistic mindset mentality has dramatically increased in Ukraine over the last 4 years. The Ukrainians from the beginning knew this. The conclusive point to this video is that the Eastern Ukrainians wanted protection from these people that are being interviewed right now. For example, Crimea, regardless of whether it was a land grab or a liberation, even though in reality it was both, because it is very likely Crimea today would also be in ashes if it hadn't been annexed. What's to say it wouldn't have been? Right sector blockaded and destroyed the pylons to Crimea, leaving the people there to freeze, starve, and not have power throughout the winter, all after it was annexed. So imagine what they would have done if it wasn't annexed. For the people that say that nationalists is just a Russian propaganda used to give false credibility to Ukrainians, now you've heard it from a Western source.
Fuck the government, burn it down. Makes me wonder about what a bunch of young guys who've been fighting a war are going to do when it's over, or whether they're ever going to be okay with that.
It's the annual Day of the Defender, and the police are on high alert. The event is meant to mark Ukraine's recent resistance to Russian aggression. But it's become a rallying point for people who celebrate violent struggle and love defying authority. People like the volunteers.
So on this glorious Day of the Defender in Ukraine, I'm seeing a lot of volunteer battalion flags and patches. I'm also seeing a lot of angry yelling dudes in black masks and various forms of baklava. What could go wrong?
The next video that I will upload will focus on nationalists' crimes against humanity against fellow Ukrainians, ranging throughout all regions of Ukraine, Eastern, Central, and Western Ukraine. This video is not meant to endorse pro-Russian separatism, nor attack the Ukrainian people themselves. But as a Ukrainian patriot, and there is a difference between patriotism and nationalism, it's only further damaging the nation of Ukraine, both on a domestic economic level and on an international level of acting like a civilized nation. But because it's against Russia, a lot of it isn't mentioned, covered up, scapegoated, or forgotten about. I've been branded as a pro-Russian many times because of putting to light some of these issues that the nationalists caused to Ukraine, which will again be thoroughly discussed and analyzed in the next video. You don't need to love or agree with every single organization and mentality to love your country. If, for example, an American hates the Republican Party and the current president, it doesn't mean that they're anti-American. This logic is not applied to the nationalists, however, and anybody against them is an enemy and are branded as a separatist. So based on your current knowledge of the nationalists and their history, I'd like to hear from you guys what you guys think about the far right-wing nationalist organizations and battalions, such as Right Sector, Azov Regiment, Aidar Battalion, Donbass Battalion, etc., in the comment section below.